York-bound publications. Included in this episode. Chapter 4a, KHADIJA. Chapter 4b, Lele. KHADIJA. Me and Tanya had been together every day since we had sex. It was about 4 days after me and Tanya had sex, that I paged KHADIJA and told her I needed to see her. Tanya was at drill team practice. She was going to be there for at least 2 or 3 hours. This was the perfect time to talk to KHADIJA without Tanya being suspicious of anything. KHADIJA scooped me up on 9th and Lehigh Avenue. She had a new car. A truck this time. A brand new white Nissan Pathfinder. That joint was fully kitted, had the hammer rims on it, and it had a banging S sound system. KHADIJA's car was better than most of the male drug dealers in the neighborhood. I gave her a kiss as soon as I got into her truck. As we drove down the street with the music blasting, I wondered when the right time would be to ask KHADIJA what I wanted to ask her. How the fuck was I supposed to ask this girl if she could get somebody killed for me? And what was I supposed to say if she asked me why I wanted someone killed? Because he did something to my girlfriend? Shit. KHADIJA would probably have her hitman kill my dumb ass if I said some shit like that. I wasn't paying attention to much of anything, until KHADIJA made a sudden right turn down one of those little ass blocks right near American and Cumberland streets. She parked the whip and looked at me, directly into my eyes, but it felt like she was looking into my soul. Shit was kind of scary. Especially considering what I now knew about KHADIJA. Come on. I want to show you something. I got out of the car and followed KHADIJA. She led me to the front of what appeared to be an abandoned building. KHADIJA banged on the door 2 times and then knocked 3 more times, a lot more lightly than the first time. A tall bald-headed guy, who appeared to be at least 6'7" and a solid 250-265 pounds. Dude looked like a cold killer when he opened the door. The second he saw that it was KHADIJA standing there, he bowed his head like he was a servant or some shit. KHADIJA stepped into the building without even greeting dude. I followed closely behind, as she made a left turn and started heading up a flight of stairs. When we got to the stairs, KHADIJA opened a door and stepped inside. The second she opened the door, I could hear the sound of voices talking and laughing. As I stepped into the room, I could see the voices were those of 3 grown men, and 2 dudes who looked to be in their late teens. Everybody shut up when KHADIJA entered the room. She turned her attention to one of the older guys, who I would guess was somewhere in his early to mid-30s. "Where is he?" KHADIJA asked. The guy nodded his head before he began walking toward the back of the huge room. KHADIJA followed, and I followed her. We walked into a smaller room, where 2 guys who looked to be in their early 20s awaited KHADIJA's arrival. KHADIJA told me to wait right there, while she walked over and talked to the 2 guys. I couldn't see what she was saying, but KHADIJA didn't look happy at all. KHADIJA seemed to calm down as the man continued talking to her. When he passed her a black book bag, KHADIJA looked inside, before she passed it to her henchman. The same one who had led us into this room. KHADIJA was now smiling like she was having the best day of her life. She smiled as she walked back towards me. "Remember you were saying you wanted to make some money in this game? You still feel that way?" I don't know what made KHADIJA change her mind, but I was happy. KHADIJA wanted me to organize and oversee a drug spot around my way. Anywhere I wanted. You know where I picked? Darien and Lehigh Avenue, right where Ice and his crew hustled at. This was going to be perfect. They were guaranteed to fight for that gold mine they called a drug spot. KHADIJA would have to call in the reinforcements once Ice and his crew made a move on us. Ice was going to get taken care of, bitch-ass Skeeter and his boys would be getting theirs pretty soon too, and I was about to be something like a boss. KHADIJA wasn't the only person who was having a great day. Everything was feeling perfect as I was telling the squad mine, and KHADIJA's plans. Well, my plan, but I had KHADIJA Blanco's blessing. We were going to take over Darien and Lehigh, without firing off one shot. Everything was good up until I told everyone to back down if they get approached by Ice or any of his crew while they were out there hustling. KHADIJA gave me some weed that she called Crinkle. She said she got it from Arizona, and that nobody on the entire East Coast had weed this good. Ice and his crew sold crack. We wouldn't even be any type of competition to one another. A very different clientele of customers. But, all that didn't mean shit. We were going to step on their territory and sell our product. That shit was basically a declaration of war on any corner in the city. I knew that shit too. I didn't plan on anyone getting hurt. Let me rephrase that, I didn't plan on anyone in my squad getting hurt. Feel me? I was just thinking about getting Ice taken up out of here, honestly. Everyone was somewhat skeptical about not putting up any resistance when approached, but practically everyone agreed to go along with the plan. Apple was the only one to vote against the plan, of course. She still carried the gun she shot Tanya with. But now, she had plenty of bullets, and was itching to catch a body. To Apple, this was the perfect opportunity for her to get her first kill. We all knew Ice and his crew were going to step to us the moment they saw us setting up shop on their block. Apple said if she went anywhere, her gun was going with her. I told Apple we didn't need her services on this go-around. I was going to bring Apple in later. I just wasn't going to let her and that raggedy-ass gun fuck up my money again. This mission was 100% about finesse. No violence was needed to get things done. I thought leaving Apple behind would take all threat of anything going sideways out of the equation. I was wrong. As usual. Me, JB, Damone Jr., and Dog headed over to Darien and Lehigh to set up shop at around 4:30 p.m. We set up directly across the street from ICE's workers, and let everyone in the vicinity know that we had weed out. Almost immediately afterward, one of the workers stepped off. There was no doubt in my mind that he was going to find one of his managers, and ask him what they should do. I already knew the manager for this shift was Ice. And just like I thought, the worker who'd stepped off seconds before, came back with Ice in tow. Ice walked directly up to me. "Da fuck is this shit? Y'all niggas gotta get the fuck out of here. Y'all weird ass niggas know you can't post up out here." I was kind of surprised that Ice was being this bold. Ice was anything but a tough guy. I wondered what was giving him this sudden burst of courage. I didn't have much time to wonder, because the next thing I knew, I heard what sounded like a loud slap. I knew it wasn't a slap I heard. Nah, this was the sound you heard when someone got sucker punched. As I looked to my left, I could see what had happened. As soon as Ice got finished talking his shit, JB stole on one of the workers, and was quickly moving in on Ice. This definitely wasn't the plan, but fuck it, when it's on, it's on. A small free-for-all broke out between us and Ice's crew. The numbers were even when we started, but we were on their block. It seemed like people started coming out of the woodworks to join in on the brawl. None of those woodwork motherfuckers were on our side either. We were outnumbered in a matter of seconds, but we held our ground and gave as good as we were getting. In the middle of the commotion, I spotted RDRR. He got sucker punched from behind. Next thing you knew, RDRR was brandishing steel. I recognized that raggedy-ass gun right away. It was Apple's piece of shit gun. I thought leaving Apple behind would mean leaving that piece of shit gun behind. I was wrong. Everyone seemed to stop when RDRR pulled out that old-ass Roscoe. He pointed that bitch directly at a group of ICE's squad members, including the bull who had snuck him. RDRR pulled the trigger, that bitch said click, but nothing came flying out of the gun's barrel. That piece of shit misfired, and the next time RD pulled the trigger on that piece of shit, it was probably going to backfire, and blow half of RDRR's hand off. We never got a chance to find out. Bitch-ass Ice had whipped his joint out in a heartbeat. A fucking Uzi. Where the fuck did this weird nigga get a fucking Uzi from? Ice ain't pulled that bitch out for show either. 1 second after I saw the gun in Ice's hand, I heard the sound of the Uzi machine spitting. Shit, it was time to abort this damn mission. We hauled ass up the block, trying to escape the darts of death Ice was raining down on our asses from his Model B fully automatic Uzi. I wish I could tell you that no one got hit by gunfire, and we all laughed about the whole incident later on. That happened before, but this was not one of those Johns. This was no laughing matter. Uzi spit multiple rounds in seconds. A few of those rounds found their way to my body. 6 of them, to be exact. Clearly, I'm still alive. I have to be, in order to be telling you what happened next, duh. Anyway, I was the only one hit by gunfire that evening. That was pretty fortunate, with all things considered. I mean, nobody would have even been there if it weren't for me. If anyone got hurt, it happened to the right person, and I explained this to each of my squad members when they visited me in the hospital. But, I didn't have that conversation with my friends for about 2 weeks, after the night I got shot. I was finally stabilized enough to have visitors, and more importantly, get to my own room with my own television. The prior 2 weeks had been mostly operations. My current temporary residence was in the intensive care unit of Albert Einstein Hospital. They were operating on me from the moment I got to the hospital, so I've heard. All I really remembered was feeling a sharp pain in my back. The next thing I remembered was waking up in my hospital bed. The squad were my first visitors. Of course, my family was there. Those were the first people I saw when I woke up. 3 days after being released from the intensive care unit, and transferred to a regular room, KHADIJA came to see me. She had that same dude with her. The one who stayed so close by her side like a bodyguard, when we were at the warehouse that day. Tears began rolling down her eyes as she approached me and bent down to give me a hug. "Aw shit." I almost yelled. My entire body felt like it was on fire at the moment. KHADIJA grabbed me so tight that it felt like I was going to crumble into small pieces or some shit. She put her hand over her mouth and took a step back. "I'm so sorry. Are you okay?" "Yeah, I'm okay," I said, faking like I was in more pain than I really was. They had me hocked up on all types of morphine and other painkillers. I was floating on cloud 9, to be completely honest. KHADIJA's tears and sorrow quickly changed to what I recognized to be anger on her face. "Who shot you?" "Huh?" I tried to act like her question was something I wasn't expecting. I was totally expecting her to ask who shot me. "It was this nigga named Ice. They tried to run us up off the spot, almost as soon as we stepped out that joint." KHADIJA didn't say anything. The expression on her face never changed either. I honestly couldn't tell if she was mad I'd been shot, or mad about something else, if we're being completely honest. I continued though. "Niggas was jealous. As soon as we stepped out there and gave out a few testers, people started coming back. That's why them niggas was so mad." KHADIJA still didn't say anything. She just nodded. That shit was making me mad uncomfortable, because I had no idea what was going on inside of KHADIJA's head. After what seemed like forever, KHADIJA finally spoke. "Try to get some rest, babe. I'll be back to see you tomorrow afternoon." KHADIJA kissed me on the forehead, before she began acting like she owned this hospital room. KHADIJA decorated my room with balloons and get well cards she got downstairs from the gift shop. After she was certain that she had arranged things the way she wanted them, KHADIJA walked over to me and placed a kiss on my lips. Then, just as suddenly as she had appeared, KHADIJA and her hitman were gone. By the time I was able to come home from the hospital and do my rehab at home, school was already in full swing. KHADIJA and her peoples ended up taking Darien and Lehi from Ice and his people. I heard a few of them jokers got killed in the 2-day war for territory. I didn't hear anything about Ice though. There was a rumor going around that Ice moved down Atlanta, with his scary ass. Since I was out of commission at the moment, I handed my job of running the corner to Enrique. All of us called him Rique. I picked Rique over everyone else, because he had a little prior experience in this shit. To most people, Rique appeared to be as African American as the rest of us. But, he wasn't. Rique was a Colombian, from Colombia. The real Colombia. 11-year-olds walking around with rifles fighting grown man wars, Colombian. Yeah, my boy Rique was really about that life. Rique was a little older than the rest of us though. He was about to turn 17 in a few months. Rique had been dabbling in the family business for years. Rique did mostly mummy work for the family. Meaning, work that wasn't important, or the type of shit that the family would have flunkies or some shit do for them. Rique's peoples were eating. They were big time. But, that shit didn't matter to Rique. He wanted to be big time, not be one of the peons at the very bottom of the totem pole, of a big time thing. Feel me? So, it wasn't too hard to talk Rique into running a corner. It's exactly what he believed he was born to do. While I was out of commission, my mom allowed Tanya to come visit me in my bedroom, where I spent most of my time now. My joint was on the 3rd floor. Mom's was posted on the 1st floor in front of the TV, or cooking most of the time. Needless to say, me and Tanya took full advantage of the opportunity. We were like 2 horny ass rabbits every time we got around each other now. Shit was kinda dope, I must admit. Tanya was at my crib every day. From the time she got home from school, all the way up until her 10:30 p.m. curfew. Tanya used to wait until 10:29 to leave my house. She always made curfew because she only lived 3 doors down. Me and Tanya were growing into something I considered beautiful. Our connection was a lot physical, but there was a heavy mental element to our shit. It was already too complicated to explain, even at that early point. While me and Tanya were playing house, KHADIJA was keeping tabs on her property. Me. Unbeknownst to me, KHADIJA had one of her henchmen posted up in the abandoned house across the street from mine. His job? Watch my house, and report back to KHADIJA the names and descriptions of anyone who visited me at my house. Lele. About a month after coming home from the hospital, Lele came to see me. You talk about surprised. I was beyond shocked. I thought Lele had forgot all about me. I was almost back to normal. The doctors, and especially my mom, were just being extra cautious, in my opinion. I still spent most of my time in my room. But, I had low-key started doing light workouts and whatnot. I was hoping to go to high school for the first time next week. Everyone else was a month and some change, Dugan at high school already. I couldn't wait to catch up. My mom's worked the 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. shift at the hospital. This was not a secret to anyone who knew me. I played hooky right at home on multiple school days a week sometimes. I heard a knock at my front door about 10 a.m. I had the crib all to myself. I was laying on the couch chillin' and watching The Price is Right. Instead of getting up off the couch, I yelled, "Who is it?" from my seat on the couch. Nobody said anything. Whoever it was, just started knocking again, instead of verbally answering my inquiry. I was pissed. I was comfortable as could be, and I knew it was going to be hell to get back into this perfect position, once I got up. I begrudgingly got up off the couch and walked the few steps to the front door. To my surprise, Lele was standing there smiling at me. "You want some company?" I was always physically attracted to Lele. From the very first time I saw her. Did I ever think I would find myself alone with her in my house? Hell no. If there was one thing that I've always absolutely despised about Lele, it's that I never knew what was on her mind. I'm not even sure that she knew what was on her mind most of the time. Lele wasn't a weirdo, but she was kind of a space cadet, in my opinion. That was any other time I saw her. Today was different. Lele seemed to have a purpose. A goal, if you will. Me and Lele started off watching TV downstairs in the living room. After about 15 minutes, she asked me to take her upstairs so she could see what my room looked like. Yeah, right. She knew what the hell she was doing. Once we got in my room, Lele kind of took control. I don't mean to interrupt the story, but let me say this. Do you know how you've done the same thing with many different people, but the way one person does it always stands out from the other? Hugs. Freaking hugs. Weird, right? That was Lele's thing. Not sexual hugging, but just hugging. Whenever Lele put her arms around me, it always felt like this was exactly where I belonged. That has always been one of the things I will always remember about Lele. Her hugs. Anyway, on this day, hugging quickly turned into light kissing. Light kissing quickly turned into heavy kissing. Heavy kissing led to what seemed like hours of fully clothed foreplay. Eventually, I had to put a stop to this shit. Not a stop, but it was time to see if this was going anywhere, or was I about to have another bad case of La Blue ones? Blue balls for you squares. I reached inside of Lele's shirt as we kissed and fumbled around looking for a strap on her bra. She ain't stopped me. Sis helped my nervous ass. The foreplay turned up a notch once she took that shirt off. More clothes began slowly disappearing as we passionately kissed. The next thing I knew, I was inside of Lele. Not even halfway though. Lele instantly moaned as she hugged my neck tighter. Lele would not allow me to go any deeper than halfway. Every time I tried, she pushed on my chest, or patted me on the back. Don't get me wrong, the sex was fantastic the way we were doing it, but I wanted to hit the back of Lele's walls for some reason. I don't know why, but I really wanted to huff and puff and, anyway, I shot my shot, if you will. When me and Lele began really getting in motion, and our rhythms began to synchronize, I went for it. Like 3 or 4 deep pumps, back to back. I went inside of that tunnel of love as deep as that motherfucking tunnel of love would allow. You heard? I only weighed about 93 pounds, soaking wet. Lele was a little bigger than me. Most likely because you had to add titties and ass into the equation. But anyway, Lele pushed me up out of, and off of her like I was a piece of paper. She jumped up out of the bed and covered her breast and mouth as she stared at me like she had seen a ghost, or some shit. I just sat there wondering what the hell I'd done wrong. I always knew I would do sex wrong at some point in my life. And, here it was. Congratulations, dickhead. Lele grabbed her clothes from the floor before she turned around and ran out of my room. She was in the bathroom all of 90 seconds, before she left there, and hauled ass out of the house. I just shook my head as I watched the weird ass scene play out right before my eyes. Lele never said a freaking word as she darted through the crib like the Tomb Raider, and eventually, the front door. Some really weird shit, fam. To this day, that shit still ranks in the top 10 weirdest things I've ever been a part of in my life. But wait. The shit gets even weirder. By the time I get to the front door, Lele is halfway up the block. Her and someone else are standing there screaming at each other, and putting hands in one another's faces. I knew who the other voice was before I could even really see her. Tanya. They were about to fight. I could tell there weren't going to be too many more words said. All I had on was my boxers. No shirt. No shoes. Some real Viking type shit. I still ran down the street when the swinging started. I grabbed Tanya since she was the smallest. Tanya and Lele yelled at each other as I carried Tanya off. I was sure that I was going to be the one Tanya was arguing with next. I know she saw Lele coming out of my house. She had to see it, that was just how my luck was set up. All bad. Tanya calmed down faster than I expected her to, once I got her inside of my house. She wasn't even cussing anymore. She just began pacing back and forth, and kind of mumbling under her breath. Whatever was on her mind, didn't seem like it had anything to do with the fight she was just in. Tanya kept doing that weird pacing back and forth shit for another 30 seconds or so, before she stopped, turned to me, and took a deep breath before finally speaking. I'm pregnant. Tanya never even saw Lele come out of my house. Well, at least, that's what she told me. Tanya said her and Lele were fighting over something that happened in school last year, or some shit. I don't freaking know. After I figured out their fight wasn't about me, or anything I did, I really stopped asking about the shit. Besides, there was a much bigger issue me and Tanya desperately needed to talk about right now. According to Tanya, she got pregnant the very first time we had sex. That was almost 3 months ago. Tanya told me that she not only knew for certain that the baby was mine, sis also told me that I impregnated her at 9:49 p.m. on Saturday, September 12th. Tanya ain't know what the fuck she was talking about. The pregnant part though? Fortunately, or unfortunately. For two 15-year-olds, whichever way you choose to look at it, that part was 100% true. Things got a lot more complicated when I finally got to start school. It was practically Christmas break. I had been out of commission for a minute, but it felt good to be back in the mix of things. I like school, but I like staying home a hell of a lot more, I ain't even gonna lie. My excitement was all about seeing a few people I needed to see, more than anything else. The very first person I needed to see was Enrique. I had a baby on the way. I needed some coin. That little job I gave to Enrique, I was going to need that back ASAP. Especially since the block was moving like a chic fillet ever since KHADIJA put that good product out there on the block. Speaking of KHADIJA, I hadn't seen her since the day she visited me in the hospital. She called me on the phone a few times, but no in-person visits. I wonder if KHADIJA still considered me her young John, or if there was somebody new? I never stopped to think about that. All I'd been thinking about was how jealous KHADIJA was going to be when she found out about Tanya being pregnant. I never thought about how I'd feel if KHADIJA had someone new. I was feeling it now though, and I didn't like this feeling, not one bit. I ain't see Enrique at school, but I did see JB, Vic Damone, and RDRR roaming the halls in between second and third period class. Everybody was glad to finally see me out and about. We kicked the shit for a minute or two, before Vic told me the real reason they had been waiting for me to get better. Shit fucked up on the block, fam. You need to holla at your girl KHADIJA, and do it fast. I'm about 2 minutes off of Enrique's bitch ass, his weird ass homies too. This was news to me. "Da fuck you talking about?" Vic shook his head before he gave me a suspicious look. "You really been that far out of the loop?" "Yeah, I really was that far out of the loop. I had a lot of my own shit going on right now. The very last thing I was concerned about was the block. Enrique was good people. I was the one who brought him into the squad. Enrique is from across town, but he spends most of his time on our side of Broad Street. I met Enrique a few years ago when we played against each other over 15th and Susquehanna Avenue. He was a cool dude. A fight broke out after the game, and Enrique fought with me. He came around the way with me that night, and he's been around ever since. Like I said, I've only known Enrique to be a cool dude. Plus I used to go with his sister Sally Sal. She was my black Disney princess back in the day. Before a black Disney princess was even thought about being a real idea. That was before this Tanya, KHADIJA, Lele fiasco started. I knew and trusted Enrique. Point blank, period. Whatever Vic was talking about had to be some type of misunderstanding or something. I decided I was going to go straight to the top to get some answers. I needed to holla at KHADIJA. Sis had got her beeper number changed and all. I had to get in touch with KHADIJA like everyone else. Hope that she rides through the block today. I didn't even go home after school. I headed straight to the block. I immediately saw what Vic was talking about. I didn't know most of these jokers out here. This was our corner. I shed blood for this bitch. Why was these weird motherfuckers out here, and not my team? Before I reached the workers to ask a few questions, I heard a car making its way up the block. I say heard, because the car wasn't close enough for me to make out what type it was, but I could clearly hear the car's stereo system. That bitch was banging too. One of those stereo systems that stops you in your tracks, because you need to see who the fuck is driving this car with this knockin' ass stereo system in it. I had been walking in the middle of the street on the little block. I stepped on the pavement as I waited to see who was in this car. As the car approached, I could see that it was something luxurious, foreign, or expensive. From the front of the car I could see that this was not a Honda, Ford, or anything else people considered regular. Nah, this was some hot shit headed my way. I could finally see the color. That factory gray color that Mercedes-Benz's sport. The car slowed down as it approached me, then it stopped. My nigga rere. Good to see you're finally up and about. It was Enrique. The person I was out here looking for. The passenger's side of the car rolled up on me. It was tinted. I never saw who was in the driver's seat, because when Enrique jumped out the car, and closed the door behind him, his big ass head had blocked my view of the driver. Yeah, it feels good to be up and about. I responded like nothing here seemed suspicious at all. First of all, me and Enrique were cool. No more, no less. I put him on this gig because I thought he was a dude who had more experience in this type of thing than anyone on my team, not because we were old friends. Defuke was he dick-eating me for like we'd been best buds for years? Overly friendly for no reason, type of motherfuckers always put me on high alert. Enrique had just put himself in that category, in my eyes. Before I could say anything, I heard the sound of KHADIJA's voice. My baby. I finally got to see who was in the driver's seat of this beautiful Benz in front of me. KHADIJA. I should have known. Sis was always pushing something nice. KHADIJA was out of the car, and hugging me tightly in 2 seconds flat. I couldn't help but to smile. KHADIJA smiled at me before she turned to Enrique. Go see if that money ready for me, babe. Babe? Why the fuck was she calling this nigga babe? What's up with that? I asked, in what I felt was a calm-like manner. KHADIJA looked at me like she had no idea what I was talking about. What's up with what? You calling Enrique, babe? Do you think that's a proper question for a young John to ask his old head John? She was dead as serious. The look on her face didn't even look the same as it usually did. She was less innocent looking, and more comic book villain looking, all of a sudden. This was completely new to me. It kind of felt like she was talking down to me. Like I worked for her or some shit. I kinda did, but still. What? I asked, clearly confused by her sudden, man, I don't know what the fuck that was. KHADIJA didn't say anything. She turned around, walked to her car, and peeled off like she was in a drag race or some shit. This bitch done lost her damn mind. I said, mostly to myself as I continued to make my way down the block. I stopped when I reached Enrique and his homies. The dude he was talking to was Face. I didn't know him personally, but I had heard of him. And everything I heard was all bad. Just like these other two weird niggas Pistol and Pete, that was out here with him. Pistol and Pete were two different people. Pete was a Puerto Rican bull. Pete was pretty much alright with me, but everyone knew not to trust him further than you can see him. Feel me? As for Pistol, honestly, I have no idea when people started calling this nigga Pistol. Bull was in my 3rd grade class back in the day. Long story short, nigga shitted on himself one day. Last time I saw that nigga, all the kids were calling him Shitty Butts. But at some point nigga shortened that to Butts. Last I knew, this Pistol nigga was named Shitty Butts, but now everybody calls him Pistol, 'cause I guess people think he's some type of killer or something? Yeah, fucking right. But anyway, Pistol and Pete hung out together so much that two people kind of shared one name. You know? Most people called both of them dudes Pistol Pete. Weird, right? So was every goddamn thing else in the hood. As I looked over Enrique's crew, I began to think that Vic may have been right. Enrique's whole little crew looked shady as fuck. I may have made a mistake by letting Enrique fill in for me temporarily. I hope this nigga knew it was temporary. 'Cause before I could finish my thought, I heard the sound of what I knew was KHADIJA's car, roaring up the block. Her car screeched to a halt as it stopped right next to where I was standing. KHADIJA rolled down the passenger's side window and glared at me. Get in the car. It was not a request. Just in case I wasn't sure, one of the guys in the black Lincoln Town car, that was trailing KHADIJA's car, stepped out of the rear passenger's side of the Lincoln, and folded his hands in front of him as he stared at me. Mexican-looking bull. Not sure if he was Mexican. He could have been Dominican, Cuban, Colombian, or any other Latin ethnicity. At that age, everybody that spoke Spanish was Mexican or Puerto Rican, to me, and a lot of other folks in our neighborhood too. That was all we were raised around back then. Anyway, I wasn't sure what type of Spaniard he was, but I did know for a fact that he was carrying a gun. A big one too. Bull made sure that I saw that shit. Me, KHADIJA, and the Puerto Rican guy, who I didn't discover was sitting in her back seat until I got in the car, rode in mostly silence. I say mostly because KHADIJA kept her music playing as we drove, and that shit had that car rockin' like a block party. We drove for a while. The last thing that I remember seeing that looked anything close to familiar or even recognizable was the Ben Franklin Bridge. I couldn't tell you where the hell I was if I had a gun to my head, and the person holding it said he would shoot me if I didn't tell him where we were at. I didn't even really know my way all that well around Philly, let alone some foreign shit right next door, like New Jersey. We were driving for about an hour before we pulled into the driveway of the biggest house I'd ever seen in my life. This was some real television type shit here. The driveway was about the length of a fucking football field. It led up to a huge house that looked like it was built a long time ago, but had been owned by people rich enough to upgrade the joint, but kind of keep the original look. Know what I'm saying? Old money type of motherfuckers. I began to wonder if I even knew the chick driving this car. Who the fuck, scratch that shit. Why the fuck did she even know where something like this was? I met KHADIJA at the supermarket on Germantown Avenue. In North Philly. Okay, I already knew KHADIJA was getting some of her money and product from a few dudes she was messing with or whatever. But what the fuck was this? Who the fuck did KHADIJA know that had the type of money to live in some shit like this? A fucking castle. I refused to believe it was one of those dumb-ass niggas she was fucking for money and product. So, who the fuck did she know that lived like this? My question was answered when we finally made it to the huge house. KHADIJA parked and jumped out of the car. She ran over to this very suave-looking 40-something-year-old gentleman, my guess, and hugged him tightly. Dad die. I watched the scene play out from my seat in the car. KHADIJA had transformed from some type of cold-blooded killer into a daddy's girl in the blink of an eye. It was some of the craziest shit I'd ever seen, up to this point.